Impact of Influence.
Covering true crime throughout the Southeast.
He had only given the women a ride up to the police station. He wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a witness. He had just given two people a ride to the station. He looked nervous, got pulled back into an interview, waived his Miranda rights. 27 hours later, he confessed. His confession matched zero evidence found at the scene.
That is the voice of Stephanie Tinsley, and we're going to hear all about her podcast in moments. Matt Harris and Seton Tucker, always grateful that you're going to spend time with us. Join in the combo.
On Facebook at Impact of Influence and also on our YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. Very important you hit that, and please support our sponsors. We are part of the Evergreen Podcast Company, and it'll be nice to talk to Stephanie. We talked to her a little bit during the Murdaugh trial. Her husband is Mark Tinsley. You know that name. We'll get into that in a little bit. But it's always cool to turn you people on to new and different true crime podcasts. So let's welcome in Stephanie. And here she is, Stephanie Tinsley. Everything They Missed is the name of the podcast. Hello, Stephanie.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Good to talk to you. Last time we saw you was the Murdaugh trial. So it's good to see you in a different way right now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. You were there almost every day, I think, right? A lot of the days.
I was there about half the time. Yeah,
you're a lot.
I was there about half the time, and it was very intense.
We should point out one of the reasons she was there, other than like everybody wanting to see the trial, was her husband was a big part of it. Mark Tinsley, you know the name if you've been following the Murdaugh and Murdaugh adjacent things. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, and what you thought about his betrayal on the Hulu series and that sort of stuff. But let's go ahead.
It's so hard for me to believe that you were a first-time podcaster. How did you manage to pull off such a professional sounding podcast without having any experience?
Compared to us, is what you're saying?
Well, I had time. I had time to think about what I wanted and what I wanted to sound like. And I've been obsessed with true crime podcasting for a long time. My favorites are Serial and S-Town, those long narrative stories, 6 to 8 episodes. Yeah. And I really, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I wanted that level, and I wanted that level of sound design. So it's very intentional that it sounds the way it does.
And I think you were telling us, as we were having technical difficulties getting set up, that you're kind of a one-woman show. You're doing this all yourself.
That's right. I've partnered with Tenderfoot TV. They're a true crime podcast network to do the editing and the sound design. But the writing, the investigating, everything has been me, a one-woman show, which is very unlikely. If you would have asked me a year ago, I never would have said this is something that I would have been doing. It was something that I was hoping, but I feel very lucky to be doing it.
Which came first, the awareness of the 2007 murder that you covered, or the I'm going to do a podcast and then found the story?
It was the second. I wanted to do a podcast and then I found the story.
Okay.
I had, and it's all very much related to the Murdaugh stuff. I'd come out of that trial. I think a lot of us felt like, oh my God, like we had just been through war. And there was this lull because our lives had been so encompassed in everything Murdaugh that there was this lull in 2024 for me. And I had thought about, all of the great journalists and people that I had encountered during the Murdaugh event, and some really poor ones too. And I thought, if I have the opportunity to do something, I want it to be different than Murdaugh. And I wanted to find a case organically, and I wanted it to be in Tennessee, which is my home state. I didn't want it to be anything Murdaugh related, although I was inspired by the trial and the people I met during the trial.
And so at some point you stumble upon or find, as you're digging and digging, this 2007 murder of Danny Harris.
That's right.
And that this man, Andrew Hayes, I guess, who was convicted. Were you aware that the Innocence Project was involved? Is that one of the things that lit a light bulb over your head?
Yes. And so the way I found out about the case, I do not believe in coincidences. And I had kind of put it out to the universe to some girlfriends of mine that I wanted to do a true crime podcast if a case found me. And lo and behold, my teenage son, and if anybody has teenage boys, they don't talk. They don't talk. And so the fact that my son got in the car and said, Lucy got up at school assembly today and talked about her dad, Jason Gishner, and he works for the Innocence Project. And I listened to my son talk about him, and I thought, that does sound fascinating, but I didn't want to do anything that was a wrongful conviction because I wanted the story to be really true crimey, and you know, my roots and my love are just in really kind of gruesome true crimey stuff. And I thought a wrongful conviction could start out with the end in mind, and I wanted it to be a narrative, really rich story. So I met with Jason Gishner, and that's how he told me about the story.
Just a little side note there. It's your similar tract was when I was like, I want to do a true crime. I want to do a true crime. Like I just kept putting it off and didn't ever felt it was quite good enough. And then Seaton comes along with the Murdaugh story this is the day of the murders, actually. Yeah.
I reached out to a friend of mine in Hilton Head who had a degree in film and then had gone into real estate, and he was like, I'll help you behind the scenes, but I'm not involved with anything Murdaugh. So I had done it, and then COVID hit, and I just kind of put it on the back burner. And, you know, when the murders happened, I was like, all right, have I missed the boat? Should we just dive in? And
yeah, you met somebody I knew, and then somebody said, yeah.
True crime can just feel so icky at times, you know,
right.
that you're watching these horrible tragedies for other people that you're watching for entertainment purposes. This I love because you are actually doing something really positive with this.
Well, thank you. And, you know, again, it goes back to being involved with the Murdaugh and seeing some of the journalists that really exploited the victims in the case. And I didn't like that. And I led my planning of the show with that in mind. And so it's not difficult to tell a really true crimey story, but still respect and not exploit the victims. So I'm glad that you agree.
I want everybody to get the podcast, everything they missed. So I won't give away everything, but during the course of the podcast, you get new evidence. So the trajectory, I'm sure, of what you had plotted out changed, right? And had you released any episodes when that came out, or how'd that work? Yeah, we should give the thumbnail.
Yeah, so it's about the murder of Danny Harris. 2007, he was found dead in his apartment in Cordova, Tennessee, which is right outside Memphis, Tennessee. And Danny was 55 years old. He had been a member of the Tennessee Air National Guard. Classic Southern dad, classic sports dad. He had 4 sons. And later in his life, he had retired and alcoholism got the best of him. So his family had decided to give him some tough love, and they were all estranged from him. And because of that and his lifestyle, he had invited some dangerous people into his life. One woman was named Tammy Vance, and Tammy was a well-known prostitute, and Danny didn't invite her into his life and home for anything other than companionship. He needed somebody there. He was lonely. He wanted someone to talk to. And because of that, he was found murdered and had been left for dead for 2 months. When the police discovered him, and it is brutal, in Memphis, there was a record heat wave that summer. I just can't imagine how they didn't find him for 2 months, just with
No.
his body decomposing. And there's hundreds of units in the apartment complex.
And so sad that no family members, no one was even noticed that he was missing for 2 months.
No. And it was because the tough love. He had missed his son's wedding a few months earlier. He was the best man in his son's wedding. And because he was too consumed with his alcoholism, he didn't show up. And so all of the family just thought, okay, Dad, So I do understand how it happened.
Well, yeah. Can't blame the family at all. No, yeah.
Yeah.
No, not to blame the family, but
He said that he.
No, just to understand.
just to understand that
Yeah.
this person who no one even notices you're missing for 2 months.
Yeah.
Right.
Not your neighbors or anybody.
Nobody, right? Nobody. And so they were serving an eviction on him. And in Memphis, when you serve a eviction on someone, the sheriff's department shows up too, because when you evict them, you just put all their stuff on the street. So when they did that, they walked in and it was a brutal scene. But what was so curious is they had to unlock the door and turn off the alarm to let themselves in. So the killer knew enough to lock the door behind him and turn on the alarm system. But what they walked into was a dark apartment. There was a towel underneath the bedroom door. And when they removed that and went into the bedroom, they saw him, and it was just a brutal, 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 brutal scene. He had been beaten to death, blood spatter all over the walls. I don't want to upset any listeners, but it was a very brutal, brutal scene. And they quickly realized his son was a sheriff's deputy, that his son was in law enforcement, and that he had another son that worked for the MPD. So you kind of start off with, oh my goodness, this is one of our own's father. And you would think that the investigation would have been incredibly meticulous, but it wasn't. It was a very hurried investigation.
And that's when they came to the conclusion that Andrew Hayes was the murderer, and he was convicted.
Yes. So in about 2 days, they had started to do some investigating. They had found Tammy Vance, the prostitute that was living with him. Tammy was driving his truck, and they had brought in Tammy and her daughter Sarah for questioning. Tammy eventually admitted that she participated in the murder. And Andrew, because he has a 62 IQ, he had only given the women a ride up to the police station. He wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a witness. He had just given 2 people a ride to the station. And because he has a 62 IQ, which is that of a 3rd grader, he looked nervous, got pulled back into an interview, waived his Miranda rights, not knowing when you waive your Miranda rights, the police are allowed to lie to you. And he had no experience with the police. 27 hours later, he confessed. His confession matched 0 evidence found at the scene. But that's, where that's when I decided I'm not going to give up on this, because what he confessed to, 3 pieces of evidence, didn't exist. Yet they had evidence. They had put out subpoenas for bank records, ATM records that would have had video, and cell phone records. But as soon as Andrew confessed, they stopped investigating.
Sure.
Okay, let me ask about this. So, do you think that law enforcement truly believed that they had got their guy, or do you think that this was, hey, that we can get this one off our books?
So Memphis, Tennessee is one of the most dangerous cities in the country.
Yes.
They have more murders per capita than almost anybody. These detectives are overworked. And I don't think they did it intentionally, but I think it was a sloppy job. And I think, like you said, Seton, I think that they got a confession. And even nowadays, I mean, this was, in 2007, but to them, confessions equal convictions. And I think they thought, this guy confessed. We got to move on to our next homicide of the day.
And also you're dealing with the victim, who is kind of a forgotten person. So there's not that added pressure. The person who you're collaring for it has the third grade IQ and probably doesn't have anybody fighting for him. So it's like, there's another 10 murders happening today. We got to do, done, gone.
I'm gonna guest on your podcast, so definitely check it out. But they talked about this whole false confession kind of thing that happens, and how common is that, and what has your research shown?
Well, so it's hard to know because it's very poorly documented. In fact, if you ask many people in law enforcement, they'll call it a shooting star. A guy in law enforcement recently said that to me. Oh, it's just a shooting star. It rarely happens. And so there's not a lot of data on it. I had paused the production of the show for 2 months because I wanted to take a deep dive into police interrogation techniques and false confessions. And when I was digging into false confessions, I interviewed some of the most world-renowned experts out there, Dr. Richard Offsheet, Steve Drizzen, Richard Leo, world-renowned experts. And they said it is, again, is it 5%? Is it 25%? We don't know that. The Innocence Project would tell you about 1 or 2% of everybody that's incarcerated is wrongfully convicted. So, but I think that what happens is police get so into finding answers and not realizing, if I show crime scene photos, am I planting memories in your head? If I am lying to you and saying DNA is there, are you mentally diminished in any way that is going to start planting memories? But, the Innocence Project has done a lot of work, but John Grisham just came out with a book called Framed last year and really takes a deep dive into it. So it's a really horrific psychological manipulation that happens.
Also, we should point out that it's not just like you're this particular guy with third grade education, but this can happen to educated people. You get into lack of sleep, you get onto,
do this or saying?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
How many hours?
you get super tired.
27 hours. I mean, I've had nights that I've had 5 hours of sleep and I wake up feeling crazy. And, I talked to other people that did give false confessions. In episode 3, you'll hear from Jason Strong, who's just an ordinary guy from Chicago. A lot of these arrests are made in the middle of the night, and Jason had drank and gotten high that night. And within 6 hours, this normal guy that was just sitting on his couch relaxing confessed to a murder, and he had never even met the woman and spent 15 years in jail. And so there's horrible cases like murder cases where you go to jail for life, but there's a lot of different, shoplifting cases or minor offenses that the subjects just want to get out of there. Just what do I need to tell you to go home?
Or they'll make a promise. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything to just get out of there.
Imagine how bad it was before they recorded these things.
Well, and this wasn't recorded. This
Yeah.
wasn't. And so that's another thing, when I think about all of the reasons I wanted to take this on, Andrew's confession was not recorded. His interrogation was not recorded. But Tammy Vance, a suspect, hers was recorded the night before. So why are you recording the white woman, if it has anything to do with race? Perhaps it does, but not the black man. Or why are you recording her and not him? It made no sense.
Because you want to protect yourself, even you would think, as an officer, and to get the conviction, you want to protect yourself. Also,
What is it protecting yourself by not recording?
I know, right?
Right.
We had a guest on who was great, who has written books about the lie detector test, and what a kind of a sham that is, which, most people, I think, yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. But a lot of people believe that is, the be all end all. And the reality is it's not much better than chance in many cases. So that is crazy.
You said in one of the episodes about the jurors. And I was so shocked when I listened to this episode that there was a juror who basically admitted that it was her birthday and that she just wanted to get the heck out of there. How often do you think that this happens? Or has your husband, Mark Tinsley, weighed in? Do you think sometimes jurors just want to get the heck out?
So there was part of during this investigation, and it was probably after I had gone to that woman's home, and heard that I saw Mark that night, and I said, "Trials are terrifying," and he said yes. And it's because of that. This particular jury was sequestered, and I think that adds to some of the wanting to get it over with. But this was the first juror that I had found. I had hired a private investigator because I wanted to talk to these jurors. I wanted to hear what happened. And we found 6 of the 14 jurors and talked at length with them. And this woman invited me into her home. And I don't think she realized what she was saying, but she cried. She had wanted to vote not guilty, but felt pressure. And she also wanted to get to her birthday party and decided to go along with everybody.
I can't believe that she admitted that to you. Like I was sitting there walking, I'm listening. I was like, what?
Listen, I was standing there just trying not to gasp, to try to remain professional and respectful because she was being so open. And she cried. And at the end of our meeting, she asked if she could pray with me, and held my hands and prayed and said, "Why do you care?" And I said, "I don't know. I haven't stopped long enough to know. I don't want to know." And she really wanted to seek justice for Andrew. So we prayed together when I left.
And during the course, when was the new evidence discovered in this process?
So the Innocence Project the Tennessee Innocence Project took Andrew on as a client in 2023. And before they accepted him as a client, they had investigated the cell phone data, which doesn't put Andrew anywhere close to the murder scene. In fact, it puts 2 women, Amy, who we spoke about before, and her daughter, Sarah. They had talked to several members of Tammy and Sarah's family, and even her family members were saying, yeah, it's not Andrew and Tammy, it's Tammy and Sarah. We're their family members. We've heard, them brag about it. So they had those affidavits. They had finally had the bank records. So they had all the evidence that was pointing away from Andrew and toward Sarah and Tammy. And that was enough for me when I really took a deep dive and dug into this. It started to be pretty clear that Andrew didn't even know the victim, but is serving a life sentence.
Everything They Missed is the name of the podcast. Onto a kind of it ties together a little bit. After doing this, did it change your opinion of, say, defense attorneys? Because, there was some animosity between your husband probably and Dick and Jim, who maybe, I should phrase that, not between Mark and them, I should say, between many people who were on the side of Murdaugh being guilty. I should rephrase that. And the attacks on Dick and Jim, which I've always thought was unfair. But did you have a difference of opinion on defense attorneys after seeing what can happen with a lack of a defense attorney or having one? Did your idea change?
Yes. And I became more compassionate to defense attorneys because Andrew Hayes's original attorney's name is Coleman Garrett. And I'm not nervous to talk to anybody. I'll talk to anybody. But I was nervous to call Coleman Garrett, his attorney, because I was so invested in this case and become so emotionally attached to it. I was afraid that he wouldn't remember Andrew. He wouldn't remember this case. It was 18 years ago.
Wow.
And when I picked up the phone and called him, he remembered it immediately and said that the case had haunted him. And there's very few professions in this world that on your very worst day at your job, someone loses their life. And that's what happens. That's what happens. And he fully admitted there were things in the trial. He let Andrew testify. He never should have let him testify. So he admits he's an 82-year-old man right now, and he's been practicing for 50 years. And he immediately knew who I was talking about. And he said, Miss Stephanie, I hope you save Andrew, but I need to be saved because he still thinks about this. So, you know, I have a lot of compassion for defense attorneys because they hold people's lives in their hands.
Yeah, and they hold the state responsible and up to the standards they're supposed to do to make the trial fair, regardless of the guilt or innocence of their client. They are making sure the state does it fairly.
That's right. That's right. So they have, you know, the state has the burden of proof, but he's walking into my client confessed, you know, and so it's difficult.
Dig at it.
It is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I think a lot of times the guilty person, even though the burden's on the other side, I get it, has a hole to climb out of, because most people assume when someone is sitting in the chair of the one that's been accused, I think most people say he's guilty, prove to me that he's not. Not the way it's supposed to be, but
Having him on and getting him, like, were you familiar with reading? I know in one of the episodes you talk about reading through all of these legal documents, and Mark's been on there to kind of break some of it down. What has it been like working with him and kind of delving into that legal aspect of it?
Well, it's been, I'm so glad that he's been able to share this experience with me. When I first dove into the trial transcripts and a lot of the legal stuff, no, I do not have a background in any of that. And so I would read them and I would have questions, and he would start talking and I would just hit record on my phone because I wanted to go back later and listen again and again to what he was saying. And that's how he made it into the show, because I would go back and listen and I would think, ooh, that sounds really good. I need to do that in my narration. And then I thought, no, I'm just going to put this in. So it was not planned, but because I talked about the case so much, he became fully aware of.
Did he ever get annoyed by that?
No, God love him. You know,
yes.
well, probably, and he just didn't tell me. But
For almost 30 years, but like, stop talking about Murdaugh.
yeah, no, he was probably humoring me some. But I think, you know, I didn't know this side of me. And so I think he was really interested in, you know, who are you and what are you doing and why is this so interesting to you? But really, I had done the production of this in complete secrecy. I only had 3 girlfriends and my husband and son that knew. No one else in my family, no other friends knew I was doing this.
That's probably a good move.
Yeah, because I didn't want anybody telling me, because you haven't done it before, you're not going to be able to do it how you wanted. But I think because Mark knew no one else in my life knew what was going on, that he very much was fine with me talking about it 24/7. I think this weekend is the first weekend I went a whole weekend and didn't talk about it.
I don't think I've been whole weekend yet.
But the two of you could have like the marble jar. When you mention yours, when he mentioned anything Murdaugh related, the jars will be overflowing with marbles.
Right. I supported him through his stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So I think he was more than fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the Hulu Murdaugh Death in the Family. What's your overall take of it? And then we'll get into specifically your husband's portrayal. But we have. How do you like the whole series as a whole?
Yeah. Well, so I think I've got a unique perspective in that they invited us to set one day to film the Watermelon Festival. And so Mark and me and my son Nathan were on set, and they filmed the Watermelon Festival on Stone Mountain. And what I thought just struck me so much was the detail that went into creating the Watermelon Festival. And it's not just the directors and the writers that really studied the characters. And I didn't realize any of this. I was just kind of going in like doe-eyed about everything. But the level of care they took for the details, and even, there was a scene that didn't make it into the show, but in the Watermelon Festival, I say Alex instead of Alec. Alex, the actor playing Alex, was walking toward Mark's character, and when they were walking toward each other, Mark's character was on top of the hill. They were on an incline, and when we're standing there being extras, this was the first scene. Mark goes up to them after their scene was over, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what is he doing? We're supposed to be extras. And they shoot a scene and they trots Mark up. And so he comes back and they shoot the scene again. And in the scene, Mark's character's walking down the hill, and all of a sudden it switches. So Alex is on the incline looking down. And I said, what did you say to him? And he said, Alex would never let anybody get up on him. And so what I told him is that that's how it would have been. If somebody is confronting Alex, he would have been on the incline looking down. And I thought, how cool that they cared enough to switch it up.
That is really cool.
And then even after that, Jason Clark, I think that's the guy's name, the actor's name. Jason Clark plays Alex. Invited Mark to come talk to him for several, I don't know, maybe it was 20 minutes to really better understand even more things, because he knew Mark was on the set. So I thought that was really cool. And then we got to meet Tommy Dewey that plays Mark. And Tommy, I mean, he really studied Mark, and it really felt like these people really care. And I'll add one more thing, so I won't.
Wait, did you think he had his mannerisms right? The person who portrayed him?
I think he does a really good job. Yeah. I mean, I think Mark is better looking, but I think that I think he does a really good job. But one other thing too that struck me, we were there for, I don't know, probably 6 or 8 hours that day. And throughout the day, people realized who Mark was and who we were. Several extras there were probably 200 extras. And I bet 50, I mean, it was dozens of extras would come up and ask about, and these are the extras in the Watermelon Festival. They would ask about the beaches. They would ask about Stephen Smith. They would ask about Buster. They would ask, this was shot in April when the real Watermelon Festival was going to be, because these are all Atlanta people, so they kept up with it. And these people were so proud to represent Hampton. They were so proud to be extras and representing the community of Hampton that it was very touching. And I don't think that people really get that when they're watching the show. And I would encourage people to go back and rewind and watch the Watermelon Festival, and all of the people in the background really, really wanted people to know that they cared about the show or the story.
It was shocking. Like I sat in on. I wasn't an extra. I just saw it. They were shooting Outer Banks in Charleston, and I was so shocked. It was just in our neighborhood. They had this car scene where they were breaking into a house, and they did that scene over and over and over and over again. Like, to me, that was so shocking of how. You just think, oh, they just shoot this and then that's it. I had no idea that they probably shoot each scene with different camera angles probably 25 times.
Yep, that's right.
It's a long day when you're doing that stuff.
Yeah. But it was cool.
Yeah. Any other questions you have or whatever? Yeah.
Getting a chance to hear about all of this and the insides from, I guess, Mrs. Tinsley.
Thank you. Well, I enjoyed being here.
Do you have any thoughts on the Murdaugh potential retrial, the appeal?
I don't think it's going to happen. I think he is where he is, and he's gonna stay there. I've been so head down in the production of this show, my
Sure.
show, that I haven't really kept up with a lot of that. I think that he's never going to get the financial crimes are never going to.
No, he's never going to leave jail.
So
yeah.
I mean, he's never going to leave jail.
No.
But I don't think that he's going to get a new trial for the murder. I really don't.
Stephanie, thank you. And thank you. We were at the little get together at the trial, and you and Mark came over and were very kind about our podcast to us. We had a little discussion, so I thank you for that. And everything they missed is the name of the podcast. We'll have links in our show notes and that sort of thing. And let's stay in touch with some more things you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Once again, big thanks to Stephanie. Check out her podcast. And we also want to point out some episodes we have coming up.
We have a whole legal episode with my dad. Several people have dubbed him the professor.
Yes, that's what I said.
Because he's
Professor of Law.
Professor of Law. About all the latest in Murdaugh's appeal and also Murdaugh adjacent cases.
Yes, and we'll be talking to some folks about their thoughts on the Hulu Murdaugh series.
Yeah, really. They've been, I've heard just all over the board. I personally really enjoyed it. And it was really interesting talking to Stephanie Tinsley about, I had no idea that they had gone down and participated in some of the Hulu series.
And you will hear all about it in an upcoming episode. We're always super grateful. Hit up the Facebook page. You can comment on that. Facebook page is exploding. And we love comments, even if it's critiquing us or if it's something that you don't like about us. We can take it.
Join in the dialogue.
Yes, some people can't take it. We can take it. We look forward to some constructive criticism and always your input. And the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We're always grateful, and we'll talk soon, friend.